everybody knows air pollution is ruining our health. The automobile continues to be the major villain because no alternatives have been found. Until now.
Now, how much do you cut down the way of pollution, exhaust?
Well, we are only 1/12 the levels permitted by the 75 heavy-duty standards on carbon monoxide.
Is that right?
Yes, right. What we have here, Senator, surprisingly, is the only operable bus that meets the 1975 California standards. In fact, a fellow walked by the street yesterday and we had the door up and he says, "What's that in there?" And I said, "Well, that's a steam engine." And he says, "A steam engine? Why, they've got one of those down at the Smithsonian."
Man has been experimenting with steam devices for centuries.
In England, the patent was granted by Charles I in 1631 to a young Scotsman named David Ramsay to cover a number of inventions. To raise water from low pits by fire, to make any sort of
Invention
mill
number 98 by the Marquis of...
An engine so contrived that working the prima mobile forward or backward, upward
Water
or
being
downward.
evaporated by fire, the vapors require greater space, about 2,000 times.
Therefore, I
than that
call this a
occupied by
semi-omnipotent
water.
engine.
Of
Do
the
intend
55
the model
patents
thereof
granted
be
for
further.
inventions during the reign of Elizabeth, 1 in 7 is for the raising of water.
The principle of its employment was not the force of steam under pressure, but the force of atmospheric pressure against the
To raise water by fire.
To raise water by fire.
In the early years, steam was competitive with the internal combustion engine in the marketplace. The Stanley Beetle steamer in 1906 held the land speed record at 127 miles an hour. Steam development lagged, however, when engineering resources were applied to the internal combustion engine, which, for the time being at least, proved to be simpler, cheaper, and more convenient. Henry Ford captured the market with his Model T, which was so simple it could be mass-produced very cheaply. With all these cars on the road, there has come a change in the land and in our way of life. "75 years after the development of the gasoline engine, the dark side of the internal combustion engine has become apparent everywhere.
The automobile is the major source of what we call the precursors of the photochemical smog problem.
30% of land in central U.S. cities is devoted to the automobile.
The first one on my left is a very clean lung from an individual who didn't smoke and was exposed to very little air pollution. On the other hand, on my right is a lung of a man who was a heavy smoker for many, many years. Also lived in the city where there was a great deal of exposure to common air pollutants.
Air pollution in Manhattan has the same effect on one's lungs as smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day. The death rate from emphysema is doubling every 4 years.
This tree is affected by smog, and as you can see by comparison, it has only the current year's complement of needles, and last year's needles to be exact. All the other needles that should be on it have since been killed and dropped off.
The automobile kills 60,000 Americans a year.
In the future, which looks very bleak, gases such as carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide.
That we're on a collision course. In the sense that the human being is being exposed to more and more smog.
About 90% of air pollution in California is caused by motor vehicles. Smog will get worse, especially in view of a future with more cars traveling greater distances. 60 miles, somewhere down there, is Los Angeles and 6 million people. Scenes like this convinced the California legislature that someone would have to make a fast choice or we would all choke. In the fall of 1968, staff representatives of the Assembly Office of Research contacted the Urban Mass Transportation Administration about demonstrating the feasibility of steam power systems. The project was funded by a $2.3 million federal grant to the Assembly Rules Committee and was the first such grant ever given to any state legislature. Because of the fear that emission control devices might fail, the legislature wanted to explore a total power system which was inherently clean, practical, and if it could justify tighter emission standards in the future. We hope the feasibility of steam power will be demonstrated beyond any doubt in this project.
3 firms were selected to develop 3 separate buses. William M. Brobeck and Associates of Berkeley, California, a company noted for research and development of cyclotron equipment, began designing an engine to power a bus for the Alameda Contra Costa Transit District.
This will solve the pump problem.
Lear Motors Corporation of Reno, Nevada, founded by William P. Lear, developer of the executive jet and many other things, has for a number of years experimented with steam engines and began designing a system to power a bus for the San Francisco Municipal Railway. And Steam Power Systems of San Diego began building an engine for the Southern California Rapid Transit District in Los Angeles.
This is the basic shop area where we fabricate all of the boiler ourselves. Some of the precision machine parts are made on the outside. They're brought in here for various inspection procedures and assembled from there on. This is one of the rooms of our engineering department where basically almost half of the work is done. It's not generally realized that to create machinery like this, you have to go through a process of conception, analysis, design, detailing, and considerable checking. Basically, these people in this room are design engineers, and they are detailing the parts that will be made for the bus program.
The basic principle of all modern steam engines is the same. The steam is recycled instead of exhausted. Water is fed by a pump to the tubes of a steam generator or boiler to be heated to steam, which, controlled by a throttle, drives the expander or engine. Then the steam is exhausted to a condenser, essentially a large radiator, to be cooled back to water. Fuel is burned outside the engine in a continuous process, much like the burning of a gas stove. Because most of the fuel is consumed continuously and completely, almost no residue is emitted into the atmosphere. two types of expanders are used in the buses. A turbine, shown here, is used by Lear, and a piston or reciprocating type is used by steam power systems and Brobeck.
The low pollution potential of a steam engine is demonstrated by this chart that shows that a normal size family or luxury type car, as we put it here, would produce as much smog with an internal combustion engine as 4 economy size cars, which in turn would produce as much pollution as 19 steam cars. Basically, we see it as a program to develop a low polluting mass transportation so that we can do some of this replacement of personal vehicles to produce much less pollution than all the cars that are being used for personal transportation today. We are now starting assembly of our bus boiler in its final configuration. It will be installed in the lab for testing next month. Here's one of the outer skins that's going to make up this boiler in various stages of fabrication. As we walk down to the end here, we can see the steam generator being assembled in the weld shop. Basically, air comes into this unit, fuel is combusted down in this end, it travels down through the other end, and is exhausted out. Water comes into the tube, and steam leaves to the expander.
Old-fashioned boilers were eliminated. The new steam generators, with about 1/4 of a mile of small diameter tubing, are inherently free from the danger of explosion. Each component was bench tested individually over a period of many months before assembly into the power system.
The purpose of this operation here is to check the performance of the boiler, which means the amount of fuel it uses and the amount of water it boils and how efficient it is. This testing is going to go on here for about 2 more months. Then we expect to bring the engine into this room with a dynamometer and have the whole power system running at the same time.
Many questions had to be answered before the whole system was installed in the buses.
Preparing right now to test some condenser. We have to fire the boiler to do that. The man just turned on the switch here, which would normally be the ignition key for the automobile engine, or the bus engine as it may be, and he's now preparing to put live steam down to the condenser. The steam generator is operating on the other side of this glass window. Now the pressure gauges and temperature gauges starting to come up on the steam generator. Bound on one cylinder.